You are not here to conform to the world. You are here to transform it. Not by might, not by numbers, but by consciousness. The one who is truly chosen will always feel the tension between the inner call and the outer crowd. You are not misunderstood because you are wrong. You are misunderstood because you have awakened. Many ask, why do I feel so distant from others? Why do I walk a path that seems so empty of companions? But I tell you, that sense of isolation is not a punishment. It is preparation. For the chosen one does not gather strength from noise, but from stillness. You were not meant to follow the multitude. You were meant to realize that the multitude begins within you. There is a sacred solitude that comes before the birth of any great manifestation. You do not withdraw from people because you are antisocial. You withdraw because you are being attuned. You are learning to move from assumption, not approval. You are learning to trust your inner knowing more than the chatter of the world. And when the time is ripe, the vision planted in the solitude of your heart shall speak, and it shall not lie. This message is for the soul who feels like a stranger among many. It is for the spirit who cannot drown out the whisper of the unseen. You are not meant to blend in. You are meant to remember who you are, and from that remembrance reshape reality itself. There is a kind of solitude that the world does not understand, a holy separation that is not chosen by the ego, but appointed by the spirit. The chosen ones do not walk away from people because they are prideful or arrogant. They are called into a space where the noise of the world no longer serves their becoming. Divine isolation is not punishment. It is the womb of transformation. It is in this quiet distance that a new awareness begins to rise, one that is not fed by external validation but nourished by internal revelation. The chosen soul is extracted from the crowd not because they are unworthy of company, but because their assignment cannot be fulfilled in the presence of too many voices. There is something sacred about being set apart. Many try to avoid it. They fill their lives with movement, conversations and noise, hoping to escape the quiet that demands reflection. But the chosen one begins to feel uncomfortable in rooms where superficiality is celebrated. Their spirit no longer finds satisfaction in shallow exchanges. Their presence begins to feel heavy for others, not because they are trying to be intimidating, but because their vibration exposes what is hidden. It's not always rejection, it is resistance. People sense the difference, and that difference, even when unspoken, creates a barrier. The chosen one doesn't need to say a word. Their energy speaks before their mouth opens. And for those who are not ready, that silence feels like thunder. This isolation is not accidental. It is by design. The divine does not raise up a voice for generations in the middle of a crowd. The greatest movements begin in caves, in deserts, in lonely places. There is a stripping away that takes place in seclusion, a refining of motives, a realignment of vision, a breaking of attachments that once defined the self. The chosen one is led away so that they may be taught how to see differently, think differently, move differently. And this re-education cannot be done in public. It must happen in the stillness of the soul, far from the gaze of applause or the echo of opinion, because what is born in private carries the power to shift entire realities in public. Often the chosen one will wrestle with the weight of this isolation. It does not always feel like a blessing. There are days when the silence feels like abandonment, when the solitude feels like exile. But in those moments, something deeper is being forged. A reliance not on people but on presence. They begin to realize that they are never truly alone, that there is a nearness of the divine that only reveals itself when all other nearness disappears. This is the sacred exchange, the comfort of the crowd for the companionship of the Creator. And once this is experienced, even the idea of going back feels foreign. The chosen one begins to crave depth, not distraction. They learn to value alignment over attention, purpose over popularity. In this divine isolation, the chosen one becomes intimately acquainted with their own soul. They begin to listen not to what others say about them, but to what truth says through them. Their identity is no longer rooted in how they are perceived, but in who they are becoming. They begin to speak from a place that does not seek agreement. They walk into spaces no longer looking to be understood. The approval of the masses loses its grip. The gaze turns inward, and there in the hidden place vision begins to rise. Ideas once blurry become clear. Directions once uncertain begin to solidify. And what once felt like exile now feels like elevation. This journey is not for the faint-hearted. To be chosen is to be called into separation. And that separation can look like being misunderstood by family, distance from friends, misread by peers, but all of it is part of the divine design. Because in order to carry what others cannot carry, you must be willing to walk where others cannot walk. The loneliness is not weakness. It is evidence that you are being prepared for something weighty, something eternal. You are not missing out. You are being set apart. Not for isolation's sake, but for illumination. What is happening in the invisible will soon be seen. But first, the chosen one must learn to thrive in the unseen. There is a kind of strength that only grows in the soil of solitude. It cannot be taught in crowds. It cannot be activated through popularity. It is the kind of strength that comes from sitting with yourself long enough to know who you are, and standing with that truth long enough to not be moved when others try to shake it. Divine isolation teaches you how to become your own sanctuary. It teaches you how to build altars in your soul and light fires without needing an audience. You begin to realize that this sacred space, though quiet, though empty, is not barren. It is rich with wisdom. It is filled with revelation. And as you continue walking deeper into this inner wilderness, you find that every step away from the crowd is a step closer to your calling. There is a weight that comes with knowing, a heaviness that sits not on the shoulders but within the spirit. When a chosen one begins to awaken to deeper truths, their inner knowing becomes both a guide and a burden. It is not the kind of knowledge that can be shrugged off or set aside. It lingers. It speaks even when silence is chosen. It stirs in moments of stillness and whispers in dreams. This knowing is not acquired through books or borrowed from voices of authority. It is revealed uncovered like a treasure hidden beneath layers of life experience, pain, divine encounter, and reflection. And once it has been revealed, it cannot be ignored. The chosen one carries this awareness like a seed planted in their soul, growing, stretching, pulling them out of comfort and into calling. There is a loneliness in carrying what others cannot yet see. The chosen one walks through life with the ache of vision. They sense things before they unfold. They recognize patterns in people's words and behaviors that others miss. They hear the quiet cries behind loud laughter. They discern motive wrapped in charm. They feel the spiritual climate of a room the moment they walk in. This knowing separates them not by arrogance but by assignment. They are not quick to speak, not because they are afraid, but because they are measuring the weight of words. They've learned that not every truth can be shared, and not every ear is ready to hear what their spirit sees. There is restraint in them, not silence. There is patience, not hesitation, and that patience is born from the understanding that timing is as important as truth. Carrying inner knowing also means being misunderstood. When a chosen one senses danger ahead and warns those around them, they are often dismissed as paranoid or negative. When they challenge popular opinions or confront comfortable lies, they are labeled difficult, judgmental, or too intense. The world is not always ready for truth, especially when it disrupts the illusions people have grown attached to. And yet the chosen one cannot help but feel the pull to stand for what they see, even when it costs them acceptance. This weight is not about being right. It is about being faithful to what has been shown to them in the quiet, in the secret, in the sacred space of communion with the unseen. The chosen one often feels like a bridge between two worlds, one foot in the physical, the other in the spiritual, one hand reaching toward heaven, the other touching the earth. They are translators of the invisible, interpreters of divine patterns that few take time to perceive. This is not a role they choose, it is a mantle placed upon them. And with this mantle comes the responsibility to steward what they know with wisdom. It means discerning when to speak and when to stay silent. It means praying for people who mock them, interceding for those who reject them, and holding space for those who are not yet ready to see. The chosen one is not moved by applause or offended by silence. They are grounded in the knowledge that purpose is greater than popularity, and that divine truth will always outlast human opinion. The weight of inner knowing also changes how the chosen one interacts with time. While others are living moment to moment, chasing temporary highs and fleeting applause, the chosen one lives with the long view. They carry insight that stretches beyond the present. They build with the future in mind. Their prayers are not just emotional responses. They are prophetic alignments. Their decisions are not just practical steps. They are spiritual strategies. They walk with intention, not because they are cautious, but because they understand the ripple effect of their choices. They know that what they carry is not just for them. It is generational. It is legacy. It is movement in seed form. And so they move differently. They live with a quiet urgency, not rushing but refusing to waste time on things that don't align with what they've been shown. Sometimes the chosen one carries revelations that they do not yet fully understand. This inner knowing is both a gift and a test. It sets the chosen one apart not for superiority but for sensitivity. It makes them feel deeply, see clearly, hear spiritually. It makes them uncomfortable with compromise and allergic to pretense. It draws them into rooms they did not ask to enter, and pulls them out of circles they used to love. It transforms their appetite. They no longer crave entertainment. They crave revelation. They no longer seek comfort. They seek alignment. They no longer chase crowds. They seek connection with truth, with destiny, with the divine. They become marked by presence, not performance. And the more they honor what they carry, the heavier it feels, not as a burden, but as evidence that they are trusted with something eternal. There is a reason why the chosen ones often feel out of place in crowds, even when they are surrounded by familiar faces. Something within them begins to stir uncomfortably when they are in environments where depth is absent and authenticity is scarce. This is not due to pride or superiority, but because their spirit is being pulled in a direction that is no longer aligned with the noise and distraction of the crowd. The chosen ones are not designed to blend in, they are wired to awaken. An awakening cannot happen in places where the soul is numbed by constant stimulation, shallow validation, and superficial connections. As their awareness deepens, their spirit begins to resist the energies that once felt like home. They become increasingly sensitive to the emotional and spiritual climate around them, detecting insincerity, falsehood, or confusion where others only see normality. This sensitivity is a signal that their soul is separating, not to isolate them as punishment, but to prepare them to become something radically different. There is a shedding that happens when the chosen one begins to walk away from the crowd. The voices that once affirmed them no longer have the same weight. The environments that once comforted them now feel constricting. The activities that once brought pleasure now seem meaningless. Something sacred is happening beneath the surface, an unraveling of attachments that no longer serve their divine purpose. The soul begins to crave something more, a higher resonance, a deeper truth, a stronger connection with the eternal. And in this craving, the chosen one starts to pull away, not to be alone for the sake of solitude, but because they are being called into a deeper level of alignment that the crowd cannot accommodate. The multitude thrives on sameness, but the chosen one is marked by difference. The crowd fears silence, but the chosen one is being taught to dwell in it. The crowd seeks affirmation from others, but the chosen one is being trained to live from inner conviction. The chosen one's separation is not just physical, it is spiritual. They may still be in rooms with others, but their soul begins to detach from the need to be understood or accepted. They no longer feel the urge to explain their choices or defend their evolution. They are no longer interested in arguments or debates designed to protect old paradigms. Their vision has shifted. They are no longer just seeing with natural eyes, they are perceiving with spiritual insight. And because of this, the crowd starts to feel foreign. Not because the people are evil, but because the chosen one's frequency has changed. The vibration of the crowd can no longer hold the weight of what is forming inside of them. The more they obey the divine prompting within, the more they are led into solitude. And in that solitude, clarity begins to emerge. Not the clarity that comes from others' opinions, but the clarity that is born in communion with divine presence. There is a profound discomfort that can accompany this separation. The chosen one may mourn relationships that once felt like destiny. They may grieve the loss of routines that once gave structure to their identity. But underneath the grief is a gentle knowing, a whisper that says you were never meant to stay where you started. The crowd represents what is comfortable, what is common, what is predictable. But the chosen are not called to live predictable lives. They are called to create pathways that have never been walked before. And creating those pathways requires spiritual focus, emotional discipline, and unwavering faith, qualities that can only be developed in the wilderness, not in the crowd. In the wilderness, the chosen one learns to hear the voice that is often drowned out by noise. In the wilderness, they are stripped of distractions until all that remains is the raw, unfiltered truth of who they really are. This separation from the crowd is also necessary, because the chosen one carries a message or a mission that cannot be compromised by popular opinion. If they stayed in the crowd, they would be tempted to dilute their message, soften their convictions, or trade authenticity for applause. But in isolation, there is no one to perform for. There is no need to impress, only the invitation to become, and in becoming, they develop a kind of spiritual authority that does not depend on numbers, likes, or followers. It is the authority that comes from knowing who they are, whose they are, and why they were sent. This is not something the crowd can give them. It is something that must be revealed in the quiet, carved out through seasons of separation and refinement. When the chosen one finally accepts this separation as sacred, they stop looking back with longing and start moving forward with intention. They begin to see that what felt like rejection was actually protection. What felt like loneliness was actually an invitation to intimacy with the divine. The further they walk from the crowd, the closer they come to clarity. The more they let go of needing to be understood, the more they are filled with understanding. And slowly their vision becomes sharper, their voice becomes stronger, and their purpose becomes undeniable. They no longer need the crowd to validate their path, because their steps are being ordered by something greater than opinion. They have been set apart not to judge the crowd, but to shine in a way that eventually draws others to the truth. But that light can only be ignited in the absence of distraction, in the sacred silence of divine separation. There is a kind of transformation that does not announce itself with noise, but instead unfolds quietly in the still spaces of the soul. The chosen ones are not shaped in the presence of crowds, nor in the chaos of applause. They are shaped in silence. Silent transformation is the process by which the spirit is refined, not by external events alone, but by deep internal shifts that often go unseen by others. While the world expects visible signs of progress and public affirmations of success, the chosen one undergoes a much deeper journey. They are being changed from the inside out. Their thought patterns are being renewed. Their desires are being purified. Their responses are being restructured. And all of this happens beneath the surface, in the solitude where only divine eyes are watching. This is where true power is born, not in performance but in presence. The chosen ones are often hidden during their most transformative seasons. It may seem like they are standing still, like nothing is moving forward, like they are being forgotten. But in that hiddenness, a divine construction is taking place. While others are building platforms, they are building character. While others are chasing attention, they are developing spiritual weight. They are learning how to stand alone, how to remain grounded without external support, how to walk through the fire without burning out. This process is not glamorous. It does not earn applause, but it prepares them for the responsibility of influence that will later be placed on their shoulders. The strength required to carry destiny must be forged in silence, because noise creates distraction, but silence fosters depth. The deeper the foundation, the higher the building can rise, and the chosen one is being built for height. Silent transformation also teaches the chosen one how to detach from false identities. In the crowd, it's easy to wear masks. It's easy to perform, to become who others need you to be, to speak in ways that earn approval. But in the silence, there is nowhere to hide. The masks begin to fall off. The ego begins to weaken. The layers of pride, fear, insecurity, and people-pleasing begin to crumble. And what is left is the raw, unedited self, the one the divine has known all along. It is in this place of inner honesty that the real work begins. Healing takes place. Forgiveness becomes real. The chosen one begins to confront wounds they had buried, beliefs they had accepted, and lies they had lived by. And slowly they begin to rewrite the narrative of their life, not based on trauma or past failure, but based on truth and divine alignment. This is not a momentary shift. It is a deep reprogramming of the soul. The world often looks for outward signs of transformation. New jobs, new titles, new relationships. But silent transformation is not about what changes around you. It's about what changes within you. It's about the bitterness that turns into peace, the fear that gives way to boldness, the confusion that is replaced by clarity. It's about how the chosen one begins to respond differently to the same situations. Where there was once anger, there is now patience. Where there was once desperation, there is now surrender. These shifts are not always visible to others, but they are undeniable to the one experiencing them. And over time, these quiet changes begin to build a new reality. The chosen one starts to attract different people, different opportunities, different spiritual assignments, not because they tried to change the outside, but because they allowed the inside to be renewed. This kind of transformation also comes with a cost. It requires the chosen one to let go of familiar comfort zones, to walk away from relationships that no longer reflect their truth, to say no to opportunities that don't align with their purpose. It requires courage to trust what is unseen, and patience to endure what is uncomfortable. There are moments when the process feels endless, when the silence feels suffocating, when the path feels unclear. But even in those moments, the chosen one is being refined. They are learning how to be still and know. They are learning that growth does not need to be loud to be real. They are discovering that the most powerful changes are often the ones no one else sees until the fruit begins to manifest. This silent transformation also becomes the soil for divine wisdom. In the absence of external voices, the chosen one learns to listen to the inner voice, the whisper of intuition, the nudge of divine guidance, the quiet pull toward destiny. They are no longer reactive to circumstances because they are being trained to live from within. This is how discernment sharpens. This is how the chosen one learns to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, what is noise and what is truth, what is emotional and what is eternal. These are the lessons that cannot be taught in crowds because crowds often echo each other. But silence forces the soul to listen deeply. It removes distractions and reveals what has always been present but buried under layers of mental clutter and emotional debris. As the chosen one continues to walk through this process, they begin to realize that they are not the same person they once were. Without anyone noticing, they have become more grounded, more whole, more attuned to their divine assignment. Their energy shifts, their presence becomes more potent, and though they may not always be able to articulate what has happened, others begin to feel the difference. It is not what they say, it's how they show up. It is not the volume of their voice, it's the weight of their spirit. And all of this is the fruit of a transformation that was born in silence, shaped by solitude, and sustained by surrender. There is an intensity to the spiritual energy carried by the chosen ones that does not always fit into ordinary spaces. They walk with a frequency that often disrupts the environments they enter, not because they seek attention, but because their very presence carries something uncommon. This energy is not aggressive, but it is deeply potent. It's the result of divine encounters, of being refined through pain, tested through seasons of isolation, and molded by revelation. The chosen one does not carry mere charisma. They carry a divine charge, a vibration that can shift the atmosphere, unsettle the dormant, and irritate the spirits that dwell in comfort and deception. This is why they often find themselves misunderstood, avoided, or even resisted by those who cannot discern what they carry. Their energy is not neutral. It has impact. It causes movement. It forces reactions. The spiritual weight they carry is not always seen with natural eyes. To some they may seem quiet, unassuming, or even odd, but beneath the surface, their soul emits an undeniable force. Their very silence speaks. Their presence disrupts demonic operations. Their prayers change the trajectory of situations. Their discernment reveals what others prefer to hide. People may not know why they feel uneasy in their presence, but something within them begins to stir. Sometimes it's conviction. Sometimes it's discomfort. Sometimes it's a longing for truth that has long been buried. The chosen one does not have to declare who they are. Their spirit announces it long before they speak. This kind of energy cannot be contained or manipulated. It flows from a well that was dug in suffering, in surrender, in sacred communion. Because of this intense spiritual presence, the chosen one often finds that others either draw close with admiration or pull away with unexplained discomfort. Relationships can feel strained without clear reason. Invitations may stop coming. Conversations may become awkward. This is not because the chosen one has done something wrong, but because what they carry exposes what others try to hide. They become mirrors, revealing spiritual clutter and unhealed wounds. Their light shines in dark corners, not with judgment but with purity, and that light can be unsettling to those who are not ready to confront their own shadows. Even those who once celebrated them may begin to withdraw, not realizing that their discomfort is not personal but spiritual. The chosen one must learn not to take this personally. They must understand that their energy is designed to cleanse, not conform. This spiritual energy also makes it difficult for them to remain in environments that tolerate mediocrity, compromise, or spiritual laziness. Their soul becomes restless in places where truth is diluted, where faith is replaced with performance, and where growth is sacrificed for popularity. They feel drained in conversations that revolve around gossip, surface-level ambitions, or constant complaining. Their spirit rejects dishonesty, manipulation, and hidden motives. This is not because they are perfect, but because they have been purified. They have walked through the fire of divine correction and emerged with a hunger for authenticity. Anything less than that begins to feel toxic. Their energy no longer matches what once entertained them, what once felt comfortable, what once passed for normal. They are no longer who they used to be, and their spirit refuses to pretend. The energy of the chosen one also carries a protective force. It repels what is not aligned with their purpose. Friendships that are not meant for the next season fall away. Opportunities that would compromise their integrity disappear. Paths that lead to destruction become blocked. Doors close not as rejection but as redirection. This protection is not always pleasant, but it is precise. The chosen one begins to realize that their spiritual vibration is not just drawing what is meant for them. It is also deterring what is dangerous. Their spirit sends a signal to the unseen realm, a declaration that says this one is marked, and because they are marked, they are monitored. They are watched, they are covered. The divine does not allow them to linger in places that would dull their light, delay their calling, or damage their soul. This energy also carries authority. The chosen one may not always realize it, but when they speak, things shift. When they pray, things break. When they worship, atmospheres change. They do not always feel powerful, but power flows through them. It is not a power of domination, it is a power of alignment. When they speak what heaven is saying, their words carry weight. When they move in obedience, their steps cause ripple effects. When they lay hands, healing begins. This authority was not earned through titles, positions, or platforms. It was birthed through obedience in the wilderness, trust in the silence, and faith in the unseen. The world may overlook them, but the spirit realm knows them. Heaven responds to them. Hell fears them, not because of who they are in the flesh, but because of what they carry in their spirit. They must be careful, though, not to misuse this energy. They must remain humble, teachable, and aligned. The same energy that heals can harm if it is filtered through bitterness or pride. The chosen one is constantly being refined, not to diminish their light, but to ensure it remains pure. They must steward their energy with wisdom, understanding that not every room deserves their presence, not every battle requires their involvement, not every conversation needs their voice. They are not called to be everywhere, because their energy is sacred. It is meant to be poured where it will produce fruit, not where it will be drained or wasted. They are walking vessels of divine power, and every step they take is a step charged with purpose. There is a sacred timing on the life of the chosen one that does not follow the world's clock. While others may seem to rise quickly, gaining recognition, influence, or material success with little resistance, the chosen one often feels as though their progress is delayed, their visibility hidden, and their path unusually difficult. But this delay is not punishment, it is preparation. The chosen one's timeline is not governed by convenience, but by divine precision. Their growth must be rooted before their elevation can be trusted. Their character must be forged before their calling can be released in fullness. Every delay is a layer of preparation. Every pause is protection from premature exposure. They are not being overlooked, they are being developed. Their time will come, but it will come when their foundation is strong enough to hold the weight of what is destined for them. There are seasons when the chosen one is ready in their desire, but not yet ready in their discipline. Their heart may burn with passion to serve, to lead, to influence, but there are still patterns, emotions, and thoughts that must be refined. Divine timing is not just about what happens, but about when it happens. A good thing at the wrong time can become a burden instead of a blessing. The chosen one is not allowed to step ahead just because they feel ready. They must be aligned with heaven's rhythm. This rhythm is not rushed. It is deliberate, patient, and wise. It takes into account not just what the chosen one wants, but what they must become in order to carry it. They are not just being prepared for a platform. They are being prepared for impact. And that kind of preparation takes time. While others are celebrated publicly for their visible achievements, the chosen one is often celebrated silently in the spirit for battles no one sees. They are being trained in private victories, conquering internal fears, releasing deep disappointments, mastering emotional stability. These unseen wins are laying the foundation for future authority. The delay teaches them how to stand without applause, how to believe without evidence, how to wait without complaining. These qualities are not praised by the world, but they are required for destiny. Every season of waiting sharpens their vision, deepens their faith, and strengthens their discernment. Delay becomes a teacher, and through its slow unfolding, the chosen one learns how to walk by trust and not by sight. There are divine doors that cannot be forced open. The chosen one may try to create opportunities, to push into spaces they feel called to, only to find themselves blocked or ignored. These shut doors are not rejections. They are divine roadblocks meant to protect timing. Just because a door is good doesn't mean it's right. The chosen one must learn that divine timing includes divine placement. The right place at the wrong time can lead to compromise. The right gift without the right maturity can cause collapse. The chosen one must trust that what is truly theirs will not pass them by, but will wait for the appointed time. And when that time comes, no human hand can stop it. Doors will open with ease. Connections will align without striving. Resources will flow where obedience leads. During this waiting, the chosen one is often stripped of crutches. They are not allowed to rely on connections, titles, or validation from others. They must become anchored in divine identity. They must learn to know who they are even when no one else affirms it. This anchoring builds an inner strength that cannot be shaken when the platform comes. It ensures that when they are finally seen, they do not perform to be accepted, but express what has already been cultivated in secret. Their message has weight because it has been tested. Their voice carries authority because it has been forged in silence. This kind of strength cannot be manufactured. It must be formed in seasons of delay where no one is watching and yet everything is changing. The chosen one often watches others advance and wonders why their journey feels slower. But their walk is not one of comparison, it is one of covenant. Their process is longer because their roots are deeper. They are not called to temporary influence, but to lasting legacy. And lasting legacy requires a long preparation. While others are sprinting toward temporary gain, the chosen one is being shaped for eternal purpose. This purpose cannot be rushed. It cannot be microwaved. It must be marinated in time, matured through obedience, and purified by surrender. Delay is not denial, it is divine strategy. Every slow step is building endurance. Every hidden moment is refining purity. Every waiting season is preparing the chosen one to sustain what is coming. The silence in delay is where the chosen one becomes intimate with the divine. Without constant movement, they are forced to be still. Without immediate results, they are invited to listen. Without recognition, they are drawn into dependence. In this stillness, revelation flows. Vision becomes clearer. Identity becomes unshakable. The chosen one begins to realize that what they are being trusted with is too sacred to be rushed. They understand that divine timing is not based on pressure, it is based on purpose. And purpose unfolds at its appointed hour. When the moment comes, all things will align. What once felt like delay will be revealed as divine orchestration. And the chosen one will be able to walk through that open door not as someone trying to prove their worth, but as someone fully aware of who they are, fully prepared for what they carry, and fully surrendered to the one who timed it all perfectly. So understand this deeply. If you are one of the chosen ones, your path will never look like the crowds. You will be set apart, not out of punishment, but out of divine protection. You will feel the sting of isolation, the weight of delay, the burden of carrying an energy too heavy for ordinary rooms, not because you are broken, but because you are being prepared for something extraordinary. What you carry is sacred. What you feel is divine tension between who you were and who you are becoming. And this transformation cannot happen in places filled with noise, distraction, and shallow connections. That is why you cannot be around a lot of people. You are not meant to blend in. You are meant to evolve in silence and emerge in power. Every moment you spend in solitude is not wasted. It is building something in you that cannot be shaken when your season comes. You are not hidden to be forgotten. You are hidden to be formed. The delay is not denial, it is a divine setup. The discomfort is not punishment, it is pruning. And your energy is not too much, it is sacred fire in a world that often prefers the cold. So honor the silence, respect the delay, trust the transformation, and walk boldly in your set apartness. Because when the time is right, heaven will make sure the world sees exactly who you were always meant to be. Everything that unfolds in your life is the outpicturing of an unseen reality. Your inner conversations, your assumptions, your faith. When God leads you, it is not with thunder, not with noise, but in the stillness of your soul. The path is not lit from outside, but from within. It is not a push, it is a pull, a feeling, a knowing that something greater is moving through you as you. You are not walking toward a destination. You are awakening to what already is. The signs are not always what the world would expect. Sometimes doors close, people disappear, plans dissolve. But all of it is perfect. All of it is guidance. This guidance is not separate from you. It is you clothed in divine awareness. When God leads, you are no longer reacting to the world. The world reacts to you. And in that moment you realize every event, every turn, every so-called detour was orchestrated by the hand of an infinite wisdom, not to test you, but to reveal you. So now we begin. Let us explore what truly happens when God leads and you listen. Divine guidance does not arrive with noise or fanfare. It begins in stillness, the quiet, almost imperceptible sense that something within is speaking without words. It isn't found in the opinions of others, the chaos of the world, or the rush to achieve something external. It starts as a whisper deep within the soul, a gentle nudge that often defies logic but carries an undeniable certainty. This stillness is not emptiness. It is the sacred space where truth begins to reveal itself. In that silence, you become aware that there is something more, something beyond the senses, calling you to trust what you feel over what you see. When a person becomes still, not physically alone, but inwardly quiet, something sacred happens. The distractions of the mind begin to fade, and the constant loop of fear, doubt, and anxiety loses its grip. In that moment, you start to hear a different voice. This voice does not argue. It does not demand. It simply is. It speaks not through volume, but through peace. It does not push, but draws you in. And for the first time, you realize that divine guidance is not a message from a distant source, but the unveiling of your own deeper awareness. Most people look for signs in the external world. They want confirmation from circumstances, from people, from patterns that make rational sense. But when God leads, the signs are not given in the beginning. They come after trust is exercised. The leading begins before the evidence, and it often starts with nothing more than a feeling, a still voice that says, "This is the way." That feeling is subtle, yet its effect can be profound. In the quiet of your spirit, you begin to recognize that this guidance is not emotional reaction, nor fleeting inspiration. It is a rooted knowing, a deep awareness that something greater is orchestrating each step. Stillness is required not just to receive the guidance, but to recognize that it has always been there. It is not that God begins to speak only when you are quiet. It is that you begin to listen. The noise of fear and the rush of worldly pressure act like static, drowning out the frequency of divine wisdom. But the moment you detach from needing immediate results or answers, the clarity begins to surface. It rises from within as a sense of peace, often in the most unlikely moments. In places where others see confusion, you begin to sense purpose. Where others would be anxious, you begin to feel calm. That is not your personality shifting. It is the presence of divine leadership taking over. This stillness is not passive. It is not laziness or apathy. It is powerful receptivity. It is a deep inner consent to allow the divine to take the reins, to allow wisdom to arise on its own, without forcing or grasping. In this space, you are not acting from desperation, but from alignment. You no longer need to run after opportunities because the right ones begin to present themselves. It is in this state that the right words, the right people, the right ideas find you, not through striving, but through resonance. You have become a vibrational match to the very guidance you seek. You don't chase clarity anymore. You become it. You don't ask for direction in panic. You listen in peace. And that peace brings you into deeper alignment than any external effort could ever produce. Guidance from God is not outside the moment. It is the moment fully embraced, fully accepted, fully seen. And the more still you become inside, the more that moment begins to speak. You begin to notice the way events arrange themselves, not to control you, but to reveal the next step. You begin to see that there are no accidents, no wasted delays, no coincidences. Everything is being used. Everything is part of the divine unfolding. Stillness reveals that you are not separate from the source that guides you. The mind loves to ask, "How do I hear from God?" Or "What if I make the wrong decision?" But in the stillness you come to realize that the answer is not in the mind. It is in your state of being. You don't receive guidance by asking louder or praying harder. You receive it by aligning deeper, by stilling the thoughts that demand proof, and trusting the awareness that needs none. Many times guidance comes when you're not even actively seeking it, because your stillness has become fertile ground. It finds you in the middle of a walk, in the quiet moments before sleep, or even during a conversation that unexpectedly answers the question you never spoke aloud. That is not coincidence. That is the natural result of having created space. When God leads, it feels like ease, not because there's no effort, but because the effort is not wasted. It is directed, focused, aligned. The internal struggle fades, and action flows from a place of inner security. You may not always recognize the moment guidance arrives. Sometimes it is only clear in hindsight. But when your inner world is quiet, you begin to notice patterns you missed before. You begin to feel drawn in a direction that may not make sense to others, but feels deeply right. And even if no one affirms it, something inside you knows this is the way. And so you follow, not with force, but with faith. Not needing to see the whole path, but trusting that each step taken from stillness is lit with purpose. The outer world is always a reflection of the inner world, whether one is conscious of it or not. Every condition, every encounter, and every circumstance is a mirror showing back the assumptions held in consciousness. When divine guidance begins to move within, it does not merely affect private emotions or thoughts. It restructures reality itself. The outer begins to shift in subtle and profound ways, echoing the change that has occurred in the unseen realm. This is not about forcing circumstances to conform, but about allowing the transformation within to radiate outward in perfect alignment with divine order. People often strive to change their environment, their relationships, their careers, believing that outer changes will bring inner peace. But when divine guidance is active, the process reverses. Inner peace precedes the external breakthrough. The shift begins first in feeling, in belief, in the quiet acceptance that one is already aligned with what is true, what is right, what is destined. As this alignment strengthens, the outer begins to rearrange, to reflect this new inner foundation. Opportunities that once felt out of reach begin to present themselves. Conversations that felt strained begin to soften. Solutions that once seemed impossible begin to emerge naturally. It is not magic in the way the world defines it, it is law. Divine law is always at work, whether known or unknown. The moment your inner perception shifts, you are no longer the same person. You no longer vibrate with the same limitations. The world around you, being a mirror, can no longer show you what you no longer are. As soon as you stop identifying as the struggling, confused, or abandoned version of yourself, the external world must reflect this redefinition. It may not happen all at once, but it begins. The movement starts as soon as you internally agree to a higher way of being, even before you speak it out loud or take a visible action. Often, the first signs of outer change are small. A different reaction to an old situation. A sense of calm where once there was frustration. A feeling of ease in moments that used to trigger fear. These are not just mood swings, they are indicators that your internal structure is changing. And because your reality is built on that structure, the entire system begins to recalibrate. People may begin to treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because you no longer invite the same dynamic. Paths that once seemed blocked may begin to open, not because the world moved, but because your inner vision cleared. When divine guidance leads the inner man, the outer man follows. The world bends to the new understanding without needing to be manipulated. There is no need to push, strive, or beg for recognition or results. The results become inevitable. It is not about earning a new outcome through effort. It is about embodying a new truth that naturally produces a new life. That embodiment becomes a magnet. It draws people, opportunities, timing, and direction that all match the inner tone. The energy that was once used in chasing becomes energy now grounded in receiving. The transformation often bypasses logic. Someone may wonder how a shift in thought can affect money, relationships, or health. But that is because they still believe reality is separate from consciousness. When God leads, you begin to see they are not separate at all. Reality is simply the visible record of what is accepted as true internally. Change the truth within, and the outer must respond, not as a favor, but as a law fulfilling itself. This realization can be jarring to those who are used to trying harder to fix things. But it is also liberating. It means you are never trapped by conditions. You are only ever invited to look within and shift the cause. Sometimes the shift brings discomfort, because the outer world must deconstruct old manifestations that no longer align. This can look like loss, like endings, like confusion, but it is only the falling away of what no longer fits the inner blueprint. Relationships may change or fall away. Jobs may dissolve. The timing of events may suddenly accelerate or delay. But all of it serves the purpose of aligning the visible with the invisible. The more you trust the process, the less you fear these disruptions. They become signs not of chaos, but of clarity in motion. The world cannot help but mirror your inner world. It is designed to do so. And so when divine guidance leads your thoughts, your feelings, your assumptions, the physical must reorganize to accommodate this divine shift. Even time begins to behave differently. Delays that once frustrated you become meaningful pauses. Long waits begin to collapse into sudden acceleration. What once required years now unfolds in weeks, not because you rushed, but because you released resistance. Your new inner identity became so anchored that the external had no choice but to catch up. Others may look at your life and call it luck or timing, but you know it is deeper than that. You know that the true shift happened long before it was seen. It happened in the quiet moments, in the surrendered thoughts, in the silent agreement with a higher path. You did not manipulate circumstances. You aligned with truth. And truth, once embraced internally, will shape the world around you in ways you could never have engineered with effort alone. When divine guidance is at work, closed doors are not the signs of punishment or failure that the ego assumes them to be. They are precise redirections crafted by a wisdom that sees the full path even when the next step is hidden. To the mind that desires control, a closed door can feel like rejection. It can feel like delay, denial, or disappointment. But when one begins to walk by inner vision rather than outward appearance, the meaning of these moments begins to shift. What appears to be a barrier is often a blessing in disguise. A form of divine protection steering the soul away from lesser outcomes towards something more aligned with its highest purpose. This redirection is subtle and sometimes frustrating because it rarely comes with immediate clarity. The door closes, the opportunity fades, the person leaves, and the mind rushes to fill the silence with doubt. Why did this happen? What went wrong? But divine guidance does not explain itself in the language of the world. It speaks in trust, in patience, in the quiet unfolding of a better story. What feels like an unanswered prayer is often a rearranged timeline. What seems like a loss is often a hidden gain. The mind sees a door slam shut and declares it the end. The spirit sees the same door close and knows that something better is about to open elsewhere. When a person is led by the divine, life stops being a series of wins and losses. It becomes a sequence of perfectly placed steps, each one guided by an intelligence that does not make mistakes. Closed doors are not curses, they are edits. They are course corrections that redirect energy, time, and attention toward the path where fulfillment actually resides. Sometimes what is blocked is not wrong in itself, but it is not right now. The timing may be off, the readiness may be incomplete, the deeper alignment may still be forming, and so the door closes. Not to hurt but to help, not to stop but to slow, not to punish but to protect the greater vision that is still unfolding beneath the surface. There are moments in life when a door closes so suddenly or so decisively that it takes your breath away. A dream that seemed certain crumbles, a relationship that felt divine ends, a job or plan dissolves without warning. These moments can feel like abandonment, but with divine insight they are revealed to be pivots. They are gentle or sometimes forceful, ways of saying not this, so that the soul is not trapped in something that would have diminished its light. These redirections may not always be understood in real time. They require faith that sees beyond the surface. They call for the kind of trust that believes the hand of God is still guiding, even in silence. The mind wants explanation. It wants logic, reasons, closure. But divine redirection often bypasses all of that. It works on a deeper plane, arranging events according to a tapestry that only makes sense in hindsight. That job you didn't get, that person who walked away, that plan that never unfolded. These are not failures. They are grace in disguise. They are the removal of the lesser to make room for the greater. Had the door stayed open, you might have walked into a version of life that looked good but drained your spirit. You might have settled for a path that offered security but not purpose. You might have remained in a comfort zone and missed the calling designed specifically for you. In the space between doors, it is easy to doubt. It is easy to feel lost or directionless. But this space is fertile. It is the divine pause between chapters, the still point where realignment happens. It is where you are taught not to depend on circumstances but on connection, not on plans but on presence, not on visibility but on vision. In this sacred space, what is no longer serving begins to fall away, and what is truly yours begins to take shape, not through striving but through surrender. Divine guidance removes what is not aligned so that your energy can be redirected toward what truly is. There is a kind of spiritual maturity that develops when you begin to bless the closed doors instead of cursing them. You begin to see them as sacred signals, not setbacks. You recognize that a no in the natural is often a yes in the spiritual. You begin to walk with less fear of loss and more awareness of leading. Even when pain accompanies the redirection, the soul knows it is being rerouted to something more fulfilling. The heart may ache, but the spirit understands. It listens beyond disappointment and begins to see design. It sees the way the closed door forced growth, revealed truth, exposed illusions, or created space for something deeper to enter. This process can unfold again and again throughout life. Each time you think you have figured it out, another door may close. Not because you failed, but because you are being refined. Each redirection is a refinement of your path, a sharpening of your focus, a deepening of your alignment. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. And that preparation often requires the shedding of attachments, the letting go of what once felt essential, and the trust to keep walking even when the next door has not yet appeared. The absence of an open door does not mean the absence of guidance. It means that the next door is being crafted in perfect timing. It means that you are exactly where you are meant to be, not stuck, not lost, but led. When divine guidance begins to govern your life, intuition no longer feels like a vague sensation. It becomes a precise inner compass. This inner compass does not function like the mind's logic or society's checklist. It speaks from a deeper place, bypassing surface reasoning and connecting directly to what is true for you in each moment. Intuition becomes the subtle yet powerful language through which divine intelligence communicates. It doesn't argue or compete for attention. It simply presents itself, calm, steady, often quiet, but unmistakably clear when you learn to listen. In the presence of this guidance, decision-making shifts. No longer dependent on endless pros and cons or external validation, you begin to navigate by feeling, alignment, and inner resonance. This shift can feel radical at first because it challenges how most people are conditioned to operate. Society trains the mind to calculate, to weigh every option based on outcome and approval. But divine intuition is not concerned with optics. It cares only for truth. When God leads, your intuition sharpens. not because something new is added to you, but because all the noise and false identities begin to fall away. What remains is your purest inner signal, an internal knowing that does not require proof before obedience. It is a pull toward peace, a nudge toward alignment, a deep awareness that something is either right or not, long before any facts confirm it. You begin to notice how certain decisions feel heavy and forced, while others feel light and expansive, even if they make less sense logically. You start to feel the energy of situations rather than just analyzing their structure. A conversation may seem fine on the surface, but your intuition picks up on the dissonance. A new opportunity might look perfect on paper, but your inner compass tells you to wait. These moments of inner contradiction are not confusion. They are clarity rising through contrast. They reveal the difference between what the world says should work and what your soul knows is true. The more you follow this compass, the more confident you become in its reliability. Intuition is not just a passive feeling. It is active intelligence. It leads you not only away from what is wrong, but toward what is divinely right. And it does so in real time, moment to moment, step by step. There is no need to know the entire journey. Intuition reveals enough light for the next step, and that is always sufficient. You begin to move in faith rather than fear. The pressure to predict every outcome fades, replaced by a growing trust in the unfolding path. This internal compass does not always align with the opinions of others. There will be moments when those around you cannot understand your choices. They will question why you walked away, why you said no, why you pursued something uncertain, when something secure was available. But when divine intuition leads, you no longer seek to be understood. You seek to be obedient to the truth within. That obedience brings freedom. It allows you to move without the burden of approval or the fear of failure. The compass within does not need consensus. It only requires attentiveness. As your sensitivity to this guidance increases, you begin to live in rhythm with a higher intelligence. You wake up each day attuned to the subtle movements of your spirit. You learn to recognize when something feels off, not because you are paranoid or anxious, but because your internal alignment has become your measuring stick. You don't need to force clarity. It arises naturally. And the more you trust your intuition, the stronger it becomes. Each act of obedience builds spiritual muscle. Each small yes to that quiet voice opens the way for a bigger revelation. There are times when following this compass leads you into unfamiliar territory. It may ask you to step away from comfort, from predictability, even from what you once prayed for. But that is because the compass sees the whole landscape. It is not guiding you to safety. It is guiding you to destiny. It doesn't just care that you avoid pain. It cares that you fulfill purpose. So it will sometimes lead you into challenge, not to hurt you but to form you. And in those places your faith deepens, your clarity sharpens, your courage grows. This divine intuition also reveals itself through confirmation. A phrase, a symbol, a dream, a sudden knowing, all become part of a language only you understand. The universe begins to echo your internal decisions. You meet people who confirm what you were just thinking. You receive messages that align perfectly with your private meditations. The world responds to your obedience with signs and support, not because you asked for them, but because you tuned into the signal that connects all things. You become aware that every moment is part of the map, even those that feel ordinary or confusing. Nothing is wasted. The delays, the redirections, the deep silences, all serve a purpose in strengthening your connection to this compass. You no longer live by accident or ambition. You live by alignment. You let go of the need to push doors open and instead learn to follow the flow of divine timing. Each time you feel that inner knowing arise, you follow without demanding to see the finish line. You trust that the compass will never mislead you, that the voice within is anchored in a wisdom greater than your own, that what you feel in your spirit is more trustworthy than what you see with your eyes. When divine guidance begins to orchestrate your life, people begin to enter and exit with precision that defies coincidence. Relationships are no longer random, they are purposeful. Each interaction becomes part of a greater unfolding, whether it lasts a moment or a lifetime. The soul starts to attract individuals who mirror its evolving state, who either support its growth or challenge it into deeper transformation. Some arrive to uplift, encourage, and expand you. Others appear to reveal unhealed wounds, to serve as reflections of patterns still lingering beneath the surface. All are teachers, all are mirrors, all are part of the divine choreography. As the inner world shifts, the outer world follows, including the people within it. Old connections may begin to feel strained, not because of conflict, but because of energetic mismatch. Conversations that once felt nourishing may now seem hollow. Shared values may begin to drift apart. This doesn't mean the other person is wrong. It simply means you are no longer aligned. When divine guidance is leading, relationships evolve at the pace of your soul, not your past. This can be painful, especially when long-held bonds begin to dissolve. But it is not rejection, it is redirection. It is the gentle unraveling of connections that no longer serve the version of you that is emerging. In place of what falls away, new relationships begin to form. These often arrive without effort. You find yourself encountering individuals who speak the same inner language, who understand your silence, who see you clearly without needing to explain. These divine connections don't need to be forced. They flow naturally, fueled by resonance rather than obligation. They often come with synchronicity, a sense that this meeting was always meant to happen. And in their presence, your soul exhales. You feel seen, heard, affirmed in a way that feels deeper than personality. These are the people sent not by chance, but by divine alignment. Not every divine connection feels easy. Some come to stretch you. They hold up mirrors that reflect your shadows. They challenge your assumptions. They press on old wounds to bring them to the surface. These people may not stay, but their presence is sacred. They awaken the parts of you that are ready to be healed. When divine guidance is leading, even conflict has purpose. Even endings are woven with wisdom. What looks like betrayal may become the path to self-respect. What feels like loss may unlock a deeper sense of worth. The soul does not judge the role people play. It receives the lesson and lets go with grace. You also begin to feel a sense of release toward those who leave. The need to cling dissolves. When someone exits your life, you trust that their part in your story is complete. There is no resentment, only recognition. You see that what once connected you no longer does, and instead of forcing a continuation, you honor the closure. Divine guidance brings a softness to these moments. You stop chasing those who drift away. You stop trying to resurrect what is already complete. You trust that if someone is meant to be in your life, they will remain or return without force. Until then, you make peace with the space they once filled. Divinely guided relationships are not always obvious at first. Some may begin in chaos or confusion, only to reveal their purpose later. Others may seem insignificant, but leave a lifelong imprint. You start to recognize that divine timing governs not just the who, but also the when. People appear at the exact moment your soul is ready. They offer keys, insights, awakenings that could not have been received earlier. You don't have to understand the full reason for each relationship while you're in it. Sometimes the clarity comes long after. What matters is the willingness to be present, to receive, to learn, and to let go when the time comes. You also become more intentional about the energy you give. Divine guidance creates discernment. You no longer share your time, energy, and heart with just anyone. You sense who is aligned, who is draining, who is anchoring you to a past you've outgrown. Boundaries become clearer, not as walls but as declarations of what is sacred. You honor your inner peace more than social expectations. You stop explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to convince people to stay. You trust that those who are truly aligned will recognize your value without persuasion. This refinement in relationships often creates space for deeper unity with others, but also with yourself. Divine guidance begins to reconnect you to your own essence, and from that place you attract others who are doing the same. There is less neediness, less proving, less performance. Relationships become sacred exchanges, not survival strategies. You love from fullness, not from lack. You give without losing yourself. You receive without guilt. The drama fades, the anxiety lessens. There is a sense of peace even in the unknown. You don't need to label every connection because you trust the energy will reveal its purpose in time. This process continues to evolve as you evolve. People may come and go, but you no longer fear the rhythm. You walk with open hands, grateful for who stays, thankful for who leaves, and receptive to who is still on the way. You understand that your relationships are not happening to you, they are unfolding through you. Each person is drawn by the vibration you carry, and each serves a role in your becoming. You are no longer searching for the perfect people. You are becoming the person who attracts what is already aligned. And in that becoming, you find that your relationships no longer drain your light, they reflect it. When divine guidance begins to truly shape your life, your perception of timing undergoes a deep and lasting transformation. The pressure to rush to meet deadlines imposed by culture or ego begins to dissolve. Instead, a new awareness emerges, one that understands that every moment unfolds with divine precision. You no longer see delays as denials, but as preparation. Waiting is no longer passive or frustrating. It becomes sacred. It becomes a space where unseen things are being arranged, where your inner world is being aligned with the blessings that are not just coming, but being perfected for the exact moment you are ready to receive them. In this divine rhythm, you start to notice that what once seemed late actually arrives on time. The job you didn't get when you desperately wanted it, the relationship that didn't work out when you prayed it would, the opportunity that fell through when you believed it was your breakthrough. All of it starts to make sense in hindsight. You begin to see how the universe was not ignoring you but orchestrating something far better than your limited timeline could perceive. The events of your life start to weave together like a symphony, and what once looked like silence was simply the pause before the music swelled again. You also notice how divine timing often contradicts logic. The mind plans, strategizes, and calculates based on linear progression: school, job, marriage, success, retirement. But the divine moves in cycles, seasons, and sudden shifts. What appears stagnant can change in an instant. What appears secure can be taken away overnight. And what seems far off can be brought near when your inner life catches up to your outer desire. This creates a kind of humility, an awareness that your plans are not the ultimate map. They are tools, but they are not truth. The timing you trusted in the past begins to feel brittle compared to the deeper knowing that the right things will never miss you when you are truly aligned. You begin to flow instead of forcing. You release the anxiety that says, "I should be further by now." You stop measuring your worth by the timeline of others. You no longer see age, milestones, or achievements as metrics of success. You see presence, alignment, and inner peace as signs that you are right where you need to be. In this space, you become more available to the present. You stop living in someday and begin to find meaning in now. The obsession with arrival fades, and what rises in its place is trust. A deep anchoring trust that whatever is unfolding is doing so with perfect intelligence. Even in seasons of waiting, you begin to notice that divine timing is not idle. It is active beneath the surface. Like a seed buried in soil, growth is taking place where the eye cannot see. Your character is being developed. Your patience is being strengthened. Your vision is being refined. Divine timing is not about delay for the sake of delay. It is about preparation. It is about making sure that when the door opens, you're not only ready to walk through it, but ready to stay on the other side. It's about sustainability, not just manifestation. What's coming is not being withheld, it's being matured. You begin to understand that premature blessings can become burdens. Getting what you want before you're ready to carry it can break you. Divine timing protects you from that. It ensures that what is given to you is given at the moment you can honor, sustain, and multiply it. It removes the illusion that faster is better and replaces it with the truth that lasting things are often slow-cooked. You start to bless the delay. You learn to extract meaning from the stillness. You see how some doors need to remain closed a little longer. Not because you are not worthy, but because the space behind them is still being prepared for your arrival. In this divine flow, you become less reactive and more responsive. You don't rush decisions out of fear of missing out. You don't jump into things because others are doing them. You wait for the inner confirmation, the divine yes that rises without tension. You trust the pause. You honor divine signals more than external signs. This kind of timing creates peace. It makes room for grace. It gives you the courage to stop chasing and start allowing. And in that allowance, things begin to unfold in ways you couldn't have predicted. Opportunities find you. The right people appear. Situations align without your interference. You no longer pray for quick results, you pray for right ones. You stop asking, "When will it happen?" and start asking, "What is this moment preparing me for?" You stop treating time like an enemy and begin to partner with it. You use it to build, to grow, to align, to become. Every delay becomes a doorway into deeper trust. Every pause becomes a portal for reflection. You begin to enjoy the pace of your own path. You no longer compare timelines. You no longer believe you're behind. You are simply where you are meant to be, and that becomes enough. As your awareness of divine timing deepens, so does your patience with yourself. You stop criticizing your pace. You stop resenting your process. You begin to see time not as a ticking clock, but as sacred space. You learn to live in rhythm with your own soul. You begin to understand that you are not late, you are in alignment. You are not stuck, you are being still for a purpose. What once felt like delay now feels like divine design, and you move through life with a quiet confidence that everything is unfolding as it should. When you begin to follow divine guidance, your external circumstances no longer hold the same power over your internal peace. The measure of progress shifts from what can be seen to what is felt in the unseen. Outward success becomes secondary to inward alignment. Even when life appears uncertain or chaotic on the surface, there is a calm center within you that remains untouched. This stillness is not ignorance or denial. It is the result of trusting that what you cannot see is more real than what you can. Faith replaces fear, not because the situation has changed, but because your source of assurance has moved from the world around you to the presence within you. This level of inner stability changes how you interpret life. Challenges that once triggered panic now invite reflection. Losses that once felt unbearable now become spaces for divine revelation. Instead of rushing to escape discomfort, you start to ask what it is teaching you. You stop resisting what is and instead lean into it with curiosity. Every event becomes a message. Every struggle becomes a mirror. Every disappointment becomes a doorway. You no longer assume that hardship means something is wrong. You recognize that divine work often happens in the darkness, when the ground is being prepared for something greater to take root. You also begin to release control over outcomes. The constant effort to manipulate, manage, and make things happen begins to feel exhausting because it is misaligned with the deeper current now guiding your life. You learn to let go. You stop clinging to how things should look and open to how they are divinely meant to unfold. This surrender is not passive, it is powerful. It means you act when moved, not when pressured. You speak when led, not when expected. You release the need to be in control and begin to trust the divine orchestration of each unfolding moment. There is a deep sense of protection that arises from this kind of faith. Not the kind of protection that avoids all hardship, but the kind that ensures everything you walk through is being used for your evolution. Even in pain, you sense that you are held. Even in confusion, you feel that you are guided. This knowing becomes your anchor. When things don't make sense, you no longer unravel. You wait, you pray, you listen, you hold your ground in stillness until the next direction becomes clear. The noise around you may be loud, but the whisper within remains steady. Divine guidance also redefines your idea of success. It is no longer measured in applause, numbers, or status. It is measured in peace, alignment, and authenticity. You stop chasing goals that drain your soul. You stop running toward destinations that don't feel like home. You recognize that the ultimate achievement is to live from a place of integrity, where your inner world and outer world reflect the same truth. This kind of success may not look impressive to others, but it feels rich, grounded, and fulfilling. You wake up with purpose, not pressure. You go to sleep with gratitude, not regret. In this space, you become less reactive to external opinions. The validation you once craved becomes less important because you are no longer building your life to be understood, you are building it to be true. You speak from the center of your knowing. You move in alignment with your spirit. You say yes and no without guilt. You detach from the need to explain. There is a quiet confidence that grows when you realize that the divine is your source, not people, not platforms, not possessions. You stop chasing approval and begin to embody truth, knowing that alignment is louder than affirmation. You begin to see yourself differently too. The version of you that needed to prove, perform, or please starts to fade. In its place emerges a soul that knows it is already worthy, already whole, already loved. You no longer define yourself by your past or your pain. You define yourself by your connection to divine wisdom. You begin to treat yourself with the same reverence that you once reserved for the sacred, realizing you were never separate from it. This deepened self-awareness creates clarity. You don't need to become anything. You need only to remember who you are. That remembrance changes your energy. People notice something different, even if they can't name it. You walk with peace. You speak with intention. You radiate a presence that is not tied to performance, but to presence itself. This is not charisma. It is spiritual authority. It doesn't come from striving. It comes from surrender. It comes from walking in alignment with a guidance greater than your intellect, trusting that what is meant for you will recognize you without effort, that what belongs to you will arrive without struggle, and that your only task is to remain true to what the voice within is whispering in every moment. When God leads you, life takes on a rhythm that defies human understanding yet brings unshakable peace. You no longer chase outcomes. You align with purpose. You stop living by sight and start walking by inner conviction. Challenges become teachers. Delays become preparation. And every person, place, and event becomes a part of your divine unfolding. In this state, you are not lost. You are led. You are not broken. You are being built. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned. As divine guidance takes over, your heart softens. Your steps become intentional, and your soul finds rest in the unseen hand that has been guiding you all along. You realize that everything you need is already within you, and everything meant for you is making its way toward you in perfect time. I invite you to look inward, not outward, for it is within that all things take root. Just as a garden reflects the nature of the seeds planted, so too does your life reflect the thoughts you nurture in the secret place of the mind. The mind is not barren ground, it is always growing something. Whether it be the fruits of joy, abundance, and love, or the thorns of fear, limitation, and doubt, depends solely on what you allow to be sown and felt as true. You may believe the world happens to you, but the truth is far more intimate. It happens through you, and often because of you. The outer world is simply the harvest of inner belief. So I ask you now, what are you planting? Are your daily thoughts rooted in the soil of faith and expectancy? Or have you unknowingly sown seeds of worry, envy, or lack? We will explore how to become the conscious gardener of your mind, pulling out the weeds of doubt and planting instead the seeds of growth, of vision, and of divine certainty. The mind, often overlooked in its creative power, is not an empty vessel but a fertile soil that is constantly receiving, nurturing, and producing according to the nature of what is sown into it. Every experience, every outer condition, is not a random occurrence but the harvest of seeds, thoughts that have been silently planted in the subconscious over time. Just as the earth cannot choose which seed it will grow, but unfailingly gives life to whatever is planted, the subconscious mind also accepts without question whatever impressions are deeply felt and believed. The soil of the earth has no preference. It will grow a rose just as readily as it will grow a thorn. It will nurture wheat and it will nurture poison, so long as the seed is placed within it and nourished by the proper conditions. Likewise, the human mind is impersonal in its function. It does not judge whether a thought is good or bad, true or false. It simply reacts to that which is deeply accepted and consistently impressed. This is why careless or repetitive thinking can be so dangerous or so powerful, depending on what is being repeated. Every sustained thought, every feeling that is allowed to linger, is a seed with potential. Whether it grows into something beautiful or burdensome is entirely determined by what the seed contains and how it is nourished in consciousness. Most people walk through life unaware that their inner conversation is a planting process. They speak words of limitation, think thoughts of fear, rehearse scenes of failure, and then wonder why life keeps delivering hardship. But the truth is, nothing in life happens without first being permitted within. The outer world is merely a mirror, a delayed reflection of what has been accepted and nurtured in the inner world. The mind, being fertile soil, must grow something, and if it is not guided consciously, it will produce by default whatever dominant thoughts are being sown, often unconsciously, habitually, and emotionally. This understanding moves the responsibility of change from the outside world to the inner life. It is not the environment or the circumstances that shape destiny, but the beliefs and assumptions harbored within. Just as a gardener must be intentional about the seeds planted and the weeds removed, so must one become intentional about the thoughts permitted to linger and the emotions allowed to take root. Every moment of attention is like watering a seed. Every repetition is fertilizing it, and every emotional response is giving it warmth and light. In this way, the mental garden is always growing, whether one tends it or not. The creative aspect of the mind lies not in its ability to reason or recall facts, but in its ability to imagine vividly and feel deeply. When a person imagines something with clarity and experiences it emotionally, even without physical evidence, the mind accepts that image as real. This is the planting of a seed. It may not sprout instantly, but the process has begun. The subconscious, which never sleeps, begins to reorganize experience, attract conditions, and influence behavior in alignment with the image held in imagination. The soil of the mind does not ask whether the desire is likely or possible. It simply begins to grow whatever has been impressed upon it with feeling. What is often missed in this process is the neutrality of the soil. Many are caught in the trap of victimhood because they believe life happens to them without their involvement. But once it is understood that the soil does not care what seed is sown, it only produces according to the nature of the seed, then a profound shift can occur. One can begin to direct their mental energy, guard the gates of their imagination, and choose what is allowed to remain in the subconscious. It is not enough to wish for a better life while continuing to feed the mind with pictures of doubt and failure. The soil cannot grow roses if it is constantly being seeded with weeds. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. Just as a gardener becomes conscious of what is being planted, what is growing, and what needs to be removed, so must we become conscious of the thought patterns running silently through the day. The quiet assumptions, the self-talk repeated under the breath, the emotions that rise at the thought of a goal. These are all indicators of what has already been planted. To change the harvest, one must first inspect the seeds. If the same types of outcomes keep appearing, It is because the same type of thoughts are being sown. The outer experience cannot change until the inner garden is cultivated differently. There is no mystery to this. It is a law as certain as gravity. That which is impressed will be expressed. Thought, when felt with conviction, is cause. Circumstance is its effect. The soil of the mind obeys this without deviation. This is why great care must be taken with what is believed, what is visualized, and what is declared as truth. Every time a statement is accepted, especially one backed with emotion, it is a seed being dropped into fertile ground. If that statement is repeated, rehearsed, or intensified through fear or desire, it grows all the more quickly. This is not metaphorical poetry, but spiritual mechanics. The mind does not rest. It is either consciously directed or unconsciously reactive. In either case, it is growing. Just as nature does not pause and wait for a gardener to return before continuing its cycle, so too does the mind continue its process of creation. Even during sleep, it is at work reacting to the dominant impressions and beliefs accumulated throughout the day. Dreams, intuition, inspiration, and mood are often signs of what is currently being cultivated. To become aware of this process is to step into creative power. Every thought a person entertains is not simply a passing mental event. It is a seed that contains within it the blueprint of a future condition. Nothing in life emerges without first being conceived in the mind, and every thought carries within it the potential to unfold into an experience, a circumstance, or a repeated pattern. The mind does not merely reflect the world, it projects into it. Every persistent mental image, every recurring idea, and every inner conversation impresses itself upon the deeper layers of consciousness. And once impressed, these thoughts begin to take on a creative and magnetic quality. They attract after their kind, much like a seed reproduces after its nature. There is no thought without consequence. Even those that seem idle or fleeting leave traces, especially when they are backed by feeling. Thought alone is powerful, but thought mixed with emotion becomes active and fertile. It is this union of idea and feeling that gives a thought its generative power. When you think with intensity, with belief, and with vivid mental imagery, you are not merely thinking, you are creating. The outer world becomes a reflection of this inner process, sometimes subtly and sometimes dramatically, depending on the depth of conviction and the frequency with which the thought is repeated. Just as a seed planted in good soil needs repetition in the form of watering and sunlight to grow, so does a thought require attention and emotion to manifest. The most ordinary thoughts, if repeated long enough, harden into beliefs, and beliefs become the filters through which we interpret and engage with life. These beliefs are not always chosen consciously. Many are adopted through habit, culture, repetition, or authority figures, and once accepted, they begin to reproduce themselves through lived experience. The same way a seed planted in the earth grows into a plant that produces more of its own kind. A belief reproduces in the form of repeated situations and responses. One who believes the world is hostile will notice evidence of hostility wherever they go. One who believes in lack will continually encounter limitations. The mind, being the creative center of reality, works tirelessly to confirm and recreate whatever has been sown into it through repeated thought. Often people imagine their thoughts have no power unless acted upon. But this is a misunderstanding of the true nature of creation. Thought itself is action on the unseen plane. It initiates a chain reaction in the unseen realms of consciousness and reality. Every act in the external world is first initiated in the invisible mental world. The more sustained a thought is, the more it gathers momentum and begins to form a mold into which life itself will pour its substance. This mold becomes a framework for experience. When one dwells on thoughts of success, love, harmony, and purpose, those thoughts create inner frameworks that life responds to. Likewise, when one entertains thoughts of failure, fear, or rejection, those inner patterns become the blueprints for future events. This is why it is not enough to wish for change on the surface level, while harboring contradictory thoughts in secret. Many people attempt to improve their lives through physical action or by manipulating external conditions, but they overlook the thought patterns that are still silently reproducing within them. If the seed remains the same, the harvest will return in kind. A person cannot think defeat and produce victory. They cannot think sickness and experience health. The law is consistent. What is sown is reaped, and the only way to change the harvest is to change the seed. Every day offers countless opportunities to sow new thoughts. Every inner dialogue, every reaction to a situation, every mental picture entertained is a seed dropped into the subconscious. The more emotion attached to a thought, the more fertile it becomes. This is why dramatic or traumatic experiences often repeat. They are heavily charged with feeling, and that feeling reinforces the thought and causes it to take deeper root. But the same principle works in reverse. Joyous, empowering, and loving thoughts, when emotionally affirmed, begin to displace old, limiting ones. Repetition with feeling is the way new seeds grow and eventually override the old. The mind does not store these thoughts as mere information. It treats them as instructions. To think something with belief is to instruct the subconscious to bring it into form. It doesn't matter if the instruction was given intentionally or unconsciously, the subconscious accepts the feeling as real and begins to shape behavior, perception, and even external events to match. That is why it is so important to monitor and elevate one's mental diet. Just as a body cannot thrive on junk food, the mind cannot flourish on a steady stream of negative, fearful, or self-defeating thoughts. Each thought is a formative influence, shaping the self-concept and by extension the whole life. Because thoughts are seeds, they do not produce immediate results. This delay between the sowing and the reaping often misleads people into thinking their thoughts have no effect. But the time gap is essential. It is what allows for revision, for conscious correction. One can identify a destructive pattern, trace it back to its mental origin, and begin planting a new kind of thought. With patience and persistence, the new seed will take root and begin to grow. The results are not always dramatic at first, but like a seed breaking through the soil, change begins invisibly before it becomes visible. Most give up too early, looking for evidence before the process is complete. But the law never fails. Thought, when consistently and feelingly impressed, always bears fruit according to its nature. There is no exception to this law, no hidden loophole or shortcut. Every person, knowingly or unknowingly, is planting seeds through their dominant mental activity. Whether they are planting seeds of growth, confidence, peace, and purpose, or seeds of anxiety, resentment, and lack, is revealed not only by what they say, but more so by what they dwell on in private, by what they accept as normal, and by what they emotionally react to. Thought alone, while powerful, remains dormant until it is fused with feeling. Feeling gives life to thought, in the same way breath animates a body. A thought by itself is like a blueprint drawn on paper. It holds the design, but without energy it remains inert. It is only when a thought is charged with emotion that it becomes a living force capable of shaping experience and influencing the conditions of life. The subconscious mind, which is the creative power behind all manifestation, responds not to empty affirmations or surface declarations, but to the deep impression made by thought that is felt as true. When you feel something, you are affirming its reality to the subconscious, whether it is wanted or not. This is why emotion is not just important but central to the process of creation. Most people think that to create change they must repeat thoughts over and over, like a machine or mantra. But repetition without feeling is mechanical and has little effect on the deeper mind. It is the emotional response that gives a thought its potency. If you declare that you are wealthy but inwardly feel fear, lack, or disbelief, it is the feeling that the subconscious hears, not the words. The subconscious does not speak the language of logic. It speaks through feeling. That is its alphabet, its vocabulary, its syntax. So when you feel poor, regardless of what you say with your lips, you are planting poverty. When you feel rejected, even if you speak of confidence, you are impressing rejection upon your inner reality. This is why imagining a scene is not enough unless you can feel it to be real. You may visualize yourself succeeding, being loved, or living in abundance. But if the feeling within contradicts the image, the result will reflect the feeling, not the picture. The creative act occurs not just through imagery, but through emotional congruence. When the picture and the feeling are aligned, when you imagine vividly and feel deeply, you create a seed that the subconscious immediately begins to nourish. You can tell when an image is taking root because the feeling will rise naturally with it. It will feel familiar, like something that already belongs to you. It will carry with it a sense of peace or conviction that no amount of external evidence can shake. The entire process of manifestation is determined by this union of thought and feeling. It is the feeling that causes the subconscious to move. Without it, thought is like an idea shouted into the wind, heard by no one, scattered and powerless. But once a thought is emotionally embraced, the subconscious begins to work through channels seen and unseen to bring it into form. It alters your perception, adjusts your behavior, and magnetizes the conditions that match the vibration of that feeling. You may find new opportunities appearing, new people entering your life, or sudden insights guiding you in unexpected ways. These are not coincidences. They are the outer reflection of the inner state that has been impressed with feeling. There is a vast difference between wishing and feeling. Many people wish for better circumstances, but they do not feel the reality of those circumstances. Wishing is rooted in separation. It says, I want this because I do not have it. Feeling, on the other hand, is rooted in identification. It says, this is mine, this is me, this is true now. The subconscious cannot be fooled by words. It responds only to what is felt as present. When you feel something, you are living it internally, and in doing so you are drawing it toward you with the silent force of mental causation. This is why Neville taught that you must live from the end. To live from the end is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and by doing so you bypass the resistance that comes with hoping or trying. Feeling can also be thought of as the spiritual signature of a belief. You always feel what you truly believe. If you believe you are unworthy, no amount of affirmation can override that unless you confront and change the feeling. Conversely, once the feeling changes, the belief is altered, and everything else shifts naturally. This is why deep emotional experiences, whether positive or negative, tend to repeat in a person's life. The feeling is the seed, and it draws to itself more of the same until it is replaced. No transformation is possible without addressing the emotional root, because that is where the real creative work is done. Even memory and imagination are governed by feeling. You remember what was emotionally significant. You daydream about what stirs you emotionally. The heart always leads and the mind follows. So to change your life, you must first feel your way into a new state of being. Begin to cultivate the feeling of what you desire. Do not wait for the condition to produce the feeling. Produce the feeling and the condition will follow. This is not mere wishful thinking. It is the law of consciousness, tested and proven through lived experience by those who understand the role of feeling in creation. Feeling is not just an effect of circumstances. It is a creative cause. It moves the inner forces of reality like wind moves water. If you can learn to evoke the right feeling regardless of appearances, you have unlocked the key to self-transformation. The discipline is not in managing external events, but in directing inward attention, holding mental pictures with emotional conviction until they become your natural state. Once the feeling is natural, it must manifest, because consciousness creates reality. You are never punished for your thoughts, but by them. You are never rewarded for outer effort alone, but by inner alignment. The state you dwell in emotionally is the mold of your world. In the visible world, people tend to judge everything by appearances. They look at what they can see, measure and explain, and from this they form opinions about what is real, what is possible and what is true. But reality does not begin at the surface. It begins below. What is seen is always preceded by what is unseen, just as a tree's fruit is preceded by its root system hidden beneath the soil. The roots of your experiences, your circumstances, and even your identity are not to be found in the outer world, but in the inner world of thought, belief, and assumption. Everything that shows up in your life, whether it brings joy or pain, is connected to a root you have nourished, usually without even realizing it. When someone encounters failure after failure, or lives in cycles of scarcity, relationship turmoil, or insecurity, they often try to change their behavior or fix the external issue. They prune the branches, paint the leaves, rearrange the environment, thinking that will correct the problem. But until the root is examined and changed, the same fruits will continue to grow. What you see in life is not a mystery once you understand the law that the unseen creates the seen. Thoughts, emotions, and assumptions that are consistently repeated and deeply felt take root in the subconscious and silently shape your reactions, your choices, and your environment. You may not see the connection immediately because roots work quietly, beneath awareness, developing strength and depth long before they emerge as results. But once something blossoms, it does so according to the nature of its root, and never otherwise. Most people live at the level of fruit, unaware of the roots they are carrying. They accept what appears on the surface as the final truth, not realizing they have the power to trace the unwanted result back to the inner cause. To do this, one must develop awareness, not just of what is happening, but of how one is reacting, thinking, and feeling beneath the surface. Reactions are the easiest way to locate the root. When a situation triggers anger, fear, or guilt, it is not the situation that causes suffering. It is the root assumption that gives rise to that emotional response. If a person is overlooked for an opportunity and feels deeply wounded, the root might be a belief in their own unworthiness. If someone is constantly anxious about money, the root may be a belief that the universe is not supportive or that resources are limited. These roots are rarely questioned because they are so familiar, so habitual, that they seem like part of reality. But they are not reality. They are creative filters that mold what kind of reality can emerge. It is a great revelation to realize that everything that has grown in your life, every condition, whether desirable or not, was once a root, an idea entertained and accepted as true. No one plants a seed and expects something unrelated to grow. Yet this is how people often treat their thoughts. They worry constantly, then hope for peace. They dwell on past betrayal, then ask for loving relationships. But the law of life is exact. As the root, so the fruit. Once you accept this, you no longer see yourself as a victim of fate or circumstance. You understand that your inner state is causative, and your outer world is reflective. Just as natural roots determine the health, size, and appearance of the plant above, so too do mental and emotional roots determine the quality and shape of one's life. Some roots are shallow and die quickly, others are deep and entangled, having grown through years of repetition and emotional reinforcement. A belief held since childhood, especially one tied to strong emotion, can become so deeply embedded that it silently influences every decision and perception. It becomes an invisible lens through which life is viewed. These are the roots that must be acknowledged and transformed if lasting change is desired. And this process is not intellectual, it is emotional and experiential. The old root must be replaced by a new one, planted through feeling, through sustained imaginative experience, through repetition in the silence of consciousness. It is not enough to simply cut the fruit and hope it disappears. One must go to the root, dig into the inner soil of awareness, and identify what idea is being affirmed in silence. This takes honesty and patience. Often people want quick change without looking at the origin. But transformation is never surface level. It is subterranean. It begins in the quiet chamber of the mind, where thoughts are felt and accepted. Once a new idea is planted and nourished consistently with belief and emotion, it begins to grow. At first there may be no visible difference. The outer conditions might remain the same. But just like a seed in the earth, something is happening beneath awareness. The root is forming. It is pushing through the darkness of the subconscious, forming patterns and instructions that will later rise into form. And when it does, it will match the nature of what was planted. The process is always the same, whether the fruit is bitter or sweet. Nothing in life happens randomly. There is always a correspondence between what you feel and what you see. And this is not to assign blame, but to awaken to the creative structure of consciousness. It is to realize that the unseen roots your habitual self-concept, the stories you rehearse, the expectations you entertain, are generating the harvest. If you do not like the harvest, you must go to the soil and examine what has been allowed to take root. This is the beginning of all inner work. It is the point where responsibility meets freedom, where the power to choose new thoughts becomes the power to create new conditions. Every individual carries within themselves a living mental garden, a space that is always active, always responsive, and always mirroring back the seeds sown through attention and belief. The mind is never idle, for even in moments of silence it is working, germinating ideas, nurturing impressions, and forming patterns that later bloom into visible experience. This inner garden does not discriminate between what is good or bad, helpful or harmful. It simply produces what it has been fed. If the seeds are those of worry, self-doubt, limitation, and fear, then the resulting crop will reflect those same qualities in outer life. If the seeds are of joy, confidence, abundance, and love, then those are the qualities that will appear in form and function. The subconscious mind acts as the fertile soil, and thought charged with emotion is the seed that determines the harvest. Consciousness, particularly the feeling-based state of consciousness, is the master gardener. It is not enough to think positively for a moment and expect lasting change. One must live persistently in the feeling of what they wish to cultivate. Every reaction, every assumption, every belief is like a drop of water to the seeds in the garden. When you react with anger or dread to life's conditions, you are watering weeds that may have long taken root in your mental environment. These emotional reactions are not isolated events, they are reinforcements. They deepen the grooves of thought, they make real the unreal, and they cause the unwanted to return in cycle after cycle. The garden will not change until the gardener changes what is being nurtured. Awareness is the key to tending this mental space. One must watch not only the outer world but the inner state. What is being rehearsed? What is being imagined? What is being felt in silence? Most people walk through life unaware that they are constantly cultivating their inner landscape. They absorb the opinions of others, the moods of the environment, the fears of the media, and then wonder why life feels chaotic or hostile. But everything absorbed becomes a seed, and everything accepted with emotion becomes a root. The mind is a receptive field that will grow whatever is placed within it consistently, and it is through inner attention that the quality of what grows can be changed. Cultivating the garden of the mind means becoming deliberate in thought, selective in attention, and conscious in feeling. It means refusing to let weeds of doubt and despair run wild through the imagination. This is not a call to denial or avoidance, but a call to focus. Just as a gardener does not argue with weeds but removes them and replaces them with flowers, so must the conscious individual replace negative habitual thoughts with elevated chosen ones. If you do not choose your thoughts, the world will choose them for you. And if you do not tend to your emotional atmosphere, it will default to the strongest impressions from the past. Imagination is the tool of the gardener. It allows one to see beyond what is and begin to feel what can be. When used intentionally, it becomes the means by which new seeds are planted. You imagine yourself successful, not because it is yet visible, but because doing so creates the internal conditions for success to grow. You feel the joy of being loved, not because someone else gave it to you, but because feeling it internally prepares the subconscious to reflect it externally. Every time you imagine vividly and feel sincerely, you are watering a new seed. The more consistent the attention, the stronger the root becomes. Eventually it pushes through the surface, and life begins to conform to what was first accepted within. The importance of persistence in this process cannot be overstated. The subconscious is not changed by one affirmation or a fleeting visualization. It responds to repeated impressions, just as the earth yields harvest through continual care. If you plant one day and neglect the next, the garden suffers. If you water for a week and then forget for a month, the growth weakens. The transformation of consciousness is a process of sustained inner work, not frantic outer action. To cultivate your mental garden is to live each day with awareness of your thoughts, emotions, and responses, knowing that every one of them is a seed being sown. The greatest evidence of inner cultivation is the shift in how one reacts to life. When old triggers no longer produce the same reactions, when disappointment no longer leads to despair, when setbacks are met with inner confidence rather than fear, it is proof that the roots have changed. The external event may remain the same, but the inner state has matured, and therefore the interpretation and outcome shift. Life begins to respond in new ways because the emotional signal being sent has changed its frequency. Just as soil enriched with new nutrients yields a better crop, so does a mind filled with new emotional patterns yield better results. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate this inner space is through silent reflection and revision. At the end of the day, the mind can be reviewed just like a garden. What was felt today? What was imagined? What reactions appeared? In this quiet space of observation, the weeds can be identified and new intentions planted. Scenes can be revised, outcomes reimagined, and feelings reoriented. This is not fantasy but discipline. It is the art of transforming the unconscious through conscious direction. And over time, this practice changes not just outcomes but identity. One no longer sees themselves as a passive observer of life, but as an active cultivator of reality. The garden of the mind is always growing something. It cannot remain empty. The question is whether what it is growing is what you truly desire or merely what has been left unattended. By taking responsibility for what is being planted, by becoming conscious of what is being watered through thought and emotion, you reclaim the power that has always been yours. The harvest of your life, whether sweet or bitter, begins with the seeds you nurture in silence. And the most important work is done not in the noise of action, but in the quiet soil of imagination. Imagination is the divine tool through which the unseen becomes seen, the intangible made tangible, the formless brought into form. Every building, every poem, every relationship, every invention began as an image held in the mind of someone who dared to believe in what did not yet exist. It is through imagination that the soul expresses its deepest desires, and it is through sustained feeling-charged imagination that those desires are clothed in the substance of life. The outer world is nothing more than a mirror, a reflection of inner activity, and imagination is the brush that paints on that invisible canvas. To imagine something with intensity and belief is to create the conditions by which it must appear, not as fantasy but as experience. It is not mere daydreaming that changes reality, but the kind of imagining that accepts the image as real now, that assumes its truth in the present moment, that feels it so deeply that it rewrites the self-concept from which life is lived. Most people imagine unconsciously. They drift into states of fear and worry and regret, picturing all that could go wrong, all that has gone wrong, all that might never be made right. And because imagination is the seed of creation, these unconscious acts of inner vision become the templates upon which life shapes itself. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are in feeling, in identity, in belief. If your imagination is habitually aligned with lack, then even the greatest opportunity will slip through your fingers, for you will interpret it through the lens of unworthiness or doubt. If you imagine yourself powerless, the outer world will mirror that belief by presenting barriers, delays, and disappointments that seem independent but are in truth projections of the self. The inner state is always writing the script, and imagination is the pen. To consciously use imagination is to take back authorship of your life. It is to decide what mental pictures will be allowed to take root and which will be cast aside. This act is not passive. It requires quiet focus and emotional engagement. One must step into the scene desired, not as a distant hope, but as a current fact. You must feel yourself to be already in possession of what you desire, already loved, already successful, already healed, already whole. The scene must be vivid, the feeling must be alive, and the identity within it must be assumed with faith. The subconscious does not distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined. It accepts whatever is impressed upon it through emotion and repetition. So when you imagine something as true and live in the emotional conviction of that truth, your subconscious goes to work to externalize it. This is why imagination is the workshop of the soul. Within it you can construct new realities, rehearse new reactions, revise old memories, and design entirely new futures. You are not limited by current facts, because facts are just frozen forms of past imagination. A circumstance that seems permanent today was likely born of unconscious assumption weeks, months, or years ago. When you understand that all appearances are fluid, that everything in form was once formless, you begin to understand your role as creator rather than victim. You begin to take your inner life seriously, knowing that what you dwell on in imagination will sooner or later press itself into the fabric of your life. One of the most powerful applications of imagination is revision. By returning in imagination to a scene that caused pain or humiliation or fear, and revising it, altering the outcome, changing the tone, introducing peace or forgiveness or strength, you overwrite the old memory with a new emotional script. The subconscious, which operates through feeling, does not distinguish the revision from the original. It simply accepts the new image and adjusts behavior, reaction, and expectation accordingly. This is not rewriting history in the outer world. It is rewriting the emotional residue within, and thereby changing the trajectory of future experience. Through revision, the gardener pulls up weeds and plants roses where once there was thorns. There is also power in imagining for others, because all are connected in consciousness. To lift someone in imagination is to send them a silent blessing that may change the entire course of their life. To see a friend as healed, to imagine a stranger succeeding, to feel love and peace for one who has wronged you. These are not just kind thoughts, they are creative acts. What you imagine for another you reinforce within yourself. When you see only the best in others, you align yourself with the frequency of that goodness and draw more of it into your own life. The challenge for many is that imagination has been dismissed as childish, impractical, or unrealistic. The world teaches logic, evidence, and conformity to outer conditions, but true transformation always begins with a vision that contradicts what is currently visible. Faith is imagination with commitment. It is choosing to believe in the unseen not because of proof but because of principle. You imagine the life you desire not because you are escaping but because you are creating. You live from the end not to deceive yourself but to impress the subconscious with a new state of being. And once that state is accepted and becomes natural, the outer world shifts to reflect it. Imagination is the inner kingdom where all things begin. When used with purpose and persistence, it becomes the most powerful faculty available to man. You do not need to manipulate the world to change your life. You only need to enter into the state of the wish fulfilled through the door of imagination. The image held with conviction becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Every great change, every miracle, every breakthrough begins not with action but with an image accepted as real and felt as true. The law of assumption is the governing principle by which all inner beliefs take shape in the external world. It is not merely a suggestion or a hopeful idea. It is a law because it operates with consistent precision regardless of whether one is aware of it. Assumption is not wishful thinking or temporary belief. It is the quiet, persistent feeling of something already being true. When a person assumes a state, they do so not with effort but with acceptance, as though they have slipped into an already existing reality. The outer world is not the cause but the effect, and the cause lies within the assumptions you consistently entertain. For it is your deep, often unconscious assumptions that structure what is possible, what is noticed, and what is experienced in your world. There is no outer circumstance that can permanently override the power of a deeply held assumption. People may argue with this because they see failure, disease, rejection, and limitation all around, yet the law remains unbroken. What is held to be true within a person's consciousness will eventually harden into fact, no matter how unlikely it may seem at first. If someone assumes they are unloved or overlooked, even the most sincere acts of affection from others may be filtered through that lens and dismissed or distorted. If another person assumes they are destined for success, that assumption will color their actions, decisions, energy, and relationships in such a way that opportunities seem to naturally flow their way. The outer events may vary, but the underlying state remains the constant force drawing equivalent conditions. Assumption is not forced. it is felt. It is not declared once and forgotten, but lived in. A person who assumes wealth does not obsess over money. They feel the ease, freedom, and generosity of already having it. A person who assumes love does not chase affection. They walk in the world as someone already chosen, already cherished. This state of being broadcasts a silent signal to life, and life responds in kind. The law of assumption works like a mirror. It does not give you what you want. It gives you what you are in consciousness. Wanting something implies lack. Assuming something implies possession. The shift is subtle but powerful, for the law responds not to words or surface-level affirmations, but to the feeling behind them. The great challenge is that most people live in unconscious assumptions. They do not realize they are assuming limitation, rejection, poverty, or failure, because those beliefs have become so familiar, so habitual, that they feel like reality rather than choice. These invisible assumptions shape every reaction, every expectation, and every interpretation of experience. A person may try new jobs, move to new cities, enter new relationships, but if the underlying assumption remains unchanged, the new environment will soon reflect the old pattern. This is not punishment or fate. It is the law acting with absolute consistency. To change life, one must change the assumptions that are creating it. Assumption begins in imagination. It is in the quiet moment when one imagines something is already true and allows the feeling of that reality to take root. It may feel unfamiliar at first, even uncomfortable, because it contradicts the well-worn grooves of past thinking. But through repetition and emotional engagement, the new assumption becomes natural. It becomes a new internal truth, and once something is accepted internally, the world begins to mirror it externally. This is why sustained imagination is so vital, not because it convinces the world, but because it convinces the self. The world is secondary, a reflection, an echo of what has been assumed. Living by the law of assumption requires a shift in identity. One cannot assume a new state while clinging to the old version of self. The new assumption must replace the old, not coexist with it. This is why doubt often arises, not because the law is not working, but because the old self-concept is resisting replacement. The mind resists what is unfamiliar, even if it is more desirable. But if you persist in assuming the new state, if you return to it again and again, especially in moments of silence or solitude, it begins to override the old programming. The key is not to struggle or force belief, but to surrender to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. To assume is to dwell in the end result without needing outer evidence, to feel the relief and satisfaction of the goal already achieved, even when appearances say otherwise. The most powerful assumptions are those that become identity. When a person no longer tries to be confident but simply assumes themselves to be confident, their actions naturally follow suit. When someone no longer seeks validation but assumes themselves to be worthy, they stop needing proof and begin expressing from completeness. This identity-based assumption becomes a foundation, and from it all decisions, interactions, and perceptions are filtered. The world conforms not because of magic, but because the self has shifted, and life always reflects the self. The law of assumption operates in all areas: health, finances, relationships, creativity, because it operates in consciousness, which touches every aspect of life. There is no part of life that stands outside the reach of assumption. Whatever is assumed as true in the inner world must by law find its reflection in the outer world. This is not instant in every case, but it is inevitable if the assumption is sustained. Time may be required for rearrangement of events or for the dissolution of old patterns, but the direction is set the moment the assumption is truly made. You do not need to know how it will come to pass, only that it already is in your internal reality. The assumption contains within it the power to manifest, because it aligns your energy, attention, and action with its fulfillment. Even when appearances contradict the assumed state, the law remains firm. You do not fight the appearances, you return to the assumption. The world may seem to resist at first because it is still echoing old assumptions, but persistence in the new state eventually alters the echo. You become more than a hopeful thinker, you become a participant in creation itself. The law of assumption reveals that life is not happening to you, it is happening through you, and the assumptions you hold are the channels through which it flows. The garden of the mind yields only what is sown and nurtured within it. To assume the state of the wish fulfilled is to plant deliberately, to water persistently with feeling, and to trust the silent, unseen process of growth. Life does not argue with your assumptions, it reflects them. As you begin to take conscious ownership of what you imagine, feel, and assume to be true, you step into your rightful place as the master gardener of your own reality. You are not at the mercy of circumstances, you are the cause behind them. Nurture the vision you wish to live, walk in the feeling of its fulfillment, and life will unfold according to your inner conviction. Let every thought you accept and every emotion you embody be a seed of the reality you desire, and you will witness your world blossom in kind.